So welcome to today's masterclass, which is how to get your managers to actually manage and save yourself at least 8 hours a week of firefighting. So in the workshop today, I'm going to show you how to get your managers to the position where they're dealing with all the day-to-day issues in your business, where they're taking the initiative, where they're thinking about the future, where they are planning ahead, they're considering the commercial impact of their decisions and the actions that they're choosing to take so that they're delivering consistent results for you. All of that meaning that it will save you at least a day a week of firefighting issues because they are actually managing their team and the day-to-day operation effectively for you. Because from what I see all the time in my work and from what I've experienced, like right now there are loads of CEOs and MDs who feel like the team are more of a burden to them and that they're always needing them and that they're not really getting what they need from their team. When what they actually really want is to have a team who really support them, who are in this with them, who are reliable. So when they say that they'll do something, they go off and do it, and a team that are helping them to grow the business. But unfortunately for many people, and for you if you're here today, I'm going to assume that a lot of the time you're probably feeling like your staff are taking too much of your time and that you're having to do things that they really should be taking care of for you, and that they're all maybe wanting things from you, too much from you, and relying on your input and needing your support, and all in very different ways. So what I'm going to share with you today are some of the reasons for that, because first of all, we have to get you thinking about where you are right now with this and what it is that applies to you and your situation. So the first step here is to get very clear on what the actual problem is, because from my experience, the root cause isn't always what we really think it is. And then most importantly, I'm going to take you through what you can do about that to start improving the results that you get from your team, so that you're seeing your teams progress in the way that you want them to, so that they're doing the right things, so that they're focusing on the right work, and ultimately making the right decisions, so that they're being commercial about what they're doing, they're being proactive, so that they're focused on those things that either make you money or are important to do or have in place to help you grow your business and get the foundations right. So to do that, I'm going to walk you through this framework. It's my Lead to Scale framework. It's a framework that I use with my clients, and it focuses on 3 essential areas that once you implement will get your team to actually be managing for you consistently. And these are, as you'll see here, leadership capability, leadership enablement, and leadership infrastructure. And once you master these 3 areas, you will create a management team that delivers results without relying on you. But before I do that, let me just very quickly introduce myself. I hate long introductions in these sessions, so I'm just going to take a minute. I'm going to quickly share a couple of points about me so that you know that what I'll share is going to be worth your time today. So I'm Leanne Bridges, and I've spent 30 years leading teams in both corporates and growing SMEs. And during the last 12 years specifically, I've been advising growing businesses on how to get the best results from their people and teams. I did this as a people and culture director in a niche gas business. It was predominantly a chemical engineering and manufacturing focused business, and we grew that business and team across Europe. And for the last 5 years, I've been operating my own business, advising CEOs and MDs and senior stakeholders how to do the same. And you'll find over 50 recommendations for my work across the different platforms. Now, if you'd like to know any more than that, please do connect with me on LinkedIn. If we're not already connected, I do share daily insights on that platform. So if you want to connect, then just scan that QR code there or type my name in, and where it says more, then make sure that you click that and actually connect with me rather than follow me, so that then if you've got any questions after today's masterclass, you can just message me and ask, and I'd be very happy to help. So, right, let's get right into all the good stuff now then. So, from all the different businesses I've worked with and from all the businesses I've been speaking to across the last 5 years of doing this specific type of leadership work, I've noticed that there are 5 common obstacles that prevent managers from actually managing, and why businesses are struggling right now to actually grow together, and instead the CEO or MD feeling a bit like they're having to pull teeth from their team when it comes to getting results. And so as I run through these with you very quickly now, I want you to identify those that are resonating or applying for you. So if anybody's off multitasking, if I could just have your attention now, because I want you to get the most from this session. So I want you to think as I go through these, which ones you're spotting that apply to you, so that then when we go through how to resolve them, you can be thinking about them in the context of what's going on in your business. So as I go through each one, if you can just type the number in the chat or the comments for anything that's particularly striking you as an issue in your business. So here are the 5 issues then. So the first one is that CEOs or MDs are finding that some of their team just aren't taking the initiative. They're not spotting what needs to be done, what issues need sorting out, or thinking ahead about actually what problems are going to come up and what needs to be prevented, what's coming down the line, without the CEO or MD having to step in. And it could be something operational, it could be a customer issue, it could be a team problem they're just letting drag on for too long. And so what that means is the CEO or MD are just firefighting issues all the time instead of actually moving the business forward. And because their managers aren't being proactive, they're not asking other people or teams to do what's required of them early enough either. And so other people are getting inconvenienced, and then that's frustrating them. And so then not only is the CEO or MD spending too much of their own time on this stuff, but it's also wasting other team members' time, it's putting other people out. And the MD then has other staff moaning at them because they've not had the notice that they need to get stuff done. So this lack of initiative, it can keep your company really stagnant and stop it from growing, or even struggling to keep up with current demand because people are relying too heavily on the MD or just too few people. And my clients and the businesses that I work with and all the people I speak to, these are smart people with really good businesses. Often there's a huge demand for their product or their service, but they just can't quite go after it because they are constantly held back because the team are struggling to grow with the business. So if that's resonating with you, then type 1 into the chat or comments and let's see what's coming up for people. Are you finding that your team aren't taking enough initiative or aren't thinking ahead without you having to prompt them? So number 2, and I'll come back and look at the chat at the end. So number 2 is that even though they're holding management team meetings or one-to-one meetings, the team aren't following through with the actions that they commit to. And these meetings feel a little bit like talking shops at times where they're going around the houses, they might get to an action, but then after the meeting, people go away and they don't do what they committed to. And the CEOs or MDs are certain that they had an agreement about what was going to happen. But then in the next meeting, progress hasn't been made. And if it has, people might have gone off at tangents. And these team members are all smart and experienced people. They seem like the right people. Some of them have done this level of job before, so they should know how to do this. And, maybe some of the others, they might have been with these companies a long time and grown with the business and been promoted, and they're all being paid high salaries, but they're just not going off and finding out what they need to do to get things done. And, my clients will quite often say to me, nobody showed me how to do all of this, yet they're feeling like they have to do a disproportionate amount of cajoling people, guiding people, chasing and following up. So type 2 into the comments now if that's resonating for you. If you find that your team just aren't following through on the actions that you're sure that you agreed with them that would actually get done. So then number 3 is that there are some team members that fall short. And even though the CEO MD have had conversations about what needs to be happening instead and the results that they want, these people just continue to fall a little bit short on some of the things. And then if they do make the changes that they've asked for, then they are quite short-lived. And the problem is that some of these key people and these changes that they're wanting from them, they might have known these people a long time, they respect them. These people have got a lot of knowledge about the business and they're certain that they should be able to do these things in the way that they need to be done. And they keep sounding like they know what they're doing, but unfortunately they just don't seem to make these changes. And so they leave the one-to-one meeting and then they go back to doing the same old thing. And then the MDs are ending up having this same conversation over and over again. So type 3 into the comments for me now if your managers, or if you've got some managers who are falling just a little bit short, who just don't seem to be able to make these changes that you're asking for despite having had conversations. So then number 4 is that, and this kind of ties everything together, and I want you to let me know for you whether this is resonating. So, and because I see this a lot, is that and it's probably the most common and the most important point, is that both the team and business lack a well-defined, standardized leadership approach and framework that enables the team to perform and deliver without this need for oversight. And without this structure that gives this effective way to hold people to account, managers just aren't stepping up, and the CEO or MD is forced to be in all the detail and constantly pulled into the day-to-day operations that really should be running smoothly. And that's because they don't have this clear, repeatable, simple way to keep the team and the operation on track. And without that, the burden of accountability just keeps falling back on them, so that they're left with the responsibility of following up on tasks, checking things get done, and holding people to commitments. And even though these responsibilities should sit with the managers, this lack of an effective approach means that accountability isn't effectively shared or enforced across the team. So the CEO or MD, they're having to chase things up, address recurring issues, and deal with problems that just really should have been handled, which obviously adds to their workload. It pulls them away from strategic tasks, and it's limiting their ability to focus on growing the business. And the good news is that I'm here today to share with you that framework and the leadership approach using the model that I've just shared with you on the last slide with the 3 elements of capability, enablement, and infrastructure, because in all my experience of doing this, it's this framework and implementing all the pillars in it in the right way that will get your managers actually managing. So that's number 4. And so if you can type number 4 in the comments for me, if you feel like you don't have this sort of robust framework for holding people to account, because I find it's just so common. And then the final thing, and I see this time and time again, is that businesses are kind of just sort of hoping that things will get better. And that's because they are so busy operationally that they just haven't given this the time and attention that it really needs. And the thing is, there's just like so much investment in people and paying all these salaries. And when you think about the cost of all of that, it's huge. But understandably, these businesses are just sort of hoping that things will improve in time, thinking that maybe when people have been there another 6 months, things might get a bit better. When they hire the next person, that will kind of like ease the capacity issue. Or if they just put in a few more hours for now, that will get them over the hump. But unfortunately, it just really doesn't get any easier without this very specific focus. It just doesn't. And what actually these people have found that I've been speaking to is it gets more complicated. The longer they've left it and the more that they've grown, until they make a decision to resolve these issues in the team, they've never had their team performing at the levels they want, and they've never got the business growing at the pace that they really want it to, because the team just aren't delivering in the way that they need them to. So let me know into the comments if number 5 resonates for you, that you've just not had the time to focus on this and give it the attention that it needs, like so many other people or leaders that I speak to, and kind of hoping that it would actually really naturally resolve over time, because I do find that comes up so often in my conversations. So the good news is, whichever one of these resonates for you, I'm going to share with you the steps to take today, the process and approach that is going to get your team delivering consistently and reliably. So there are 3 parts then to this presentation, this workshop. As I said, there's leadership, capability, enablement, and infrastructure. So we're going to go straight into part 1, which is about developing your leader's capability. So the focus here is on building a management team that can truly lead. They can actually take ownership, that they will step up, they will guide their teams without you having to sort of like get involved in it. If you're like the CEOs and MDs that I work with, you will probably have a very talented management team, people who know your business inside and out, but somehow you still find yourself in the thick of all of that, managing issues that you just really didn't think would be on your plate with where you are now in your business. And you might be like them, left wondering, like, why is it that happens? You know, they've got the experience, they know their functional areas, yet whenever things get challenging, it just lands back with you, and they're not stepping up and leading their people in the way that you need them to. The reality here is that there is a gap in leadership capability. You know, being good at the job doesn't automatically make someone a good leader of people. It's not just about knowing their functional area. They need to know how to lead other people effectively. And this is where many people struggle, because they're leading people. Leading people's like very different, isn't it, from doing the technical side of the job? You'll know that. And so they need something more than advice or tasks handed to them. They actually need the skills to lead. Now, in my program, I go through 6 16 essential leadership skills that I know from years of experience and research are key to creating high-performing teams and driving, therefore, business results and growth. And here's the good thing, is that most managers really don't need an overhaul of all of those 16. It's often about making small but very meaningful shifts across a few areas. And that's what ends up making a massive difference. It's these subtle shifts that allow them to really step up into their leadership roles. Now, I obviously couldn't go through 16 now, but to help you today, I am going to share with you 3 of the most common skills that tend to be missing. And if you notice these skills are missing in your team, then addressing them will be a game changer for you. So these are the areas they definitely need to be focused on if they're missing. So the first is delegating clearly and effectively. So when tasks aren't getting completed on time and results aren't coming, one very common reason is the way that delegation is actually happening. So your managers might be asking for work to be done, but not in the right way. Now, the reason is rarely like lack of capability. It's not that they're not capable, it's just that they haven't learned how to delegate effectively themselves. They struggle to set clear expectations, set out what's required, or set deadlines in the right way for people. Now, I had this recently with a manager of mine who worked for a client, and his team were a sales processing team, and they weren't processing orders in the right timeframes, and it had actually been going on for years. And after we dug into it, it boiled down to just not delegating effectively and monitoring work in the right way. The deadlines weren't clear enough, the process wasn't clear enough between team members, the manager wasn't putting enough focus into what his team was actually doing. And the MD had assumed the team manager naturally would have just done that. But when we dug into what was going on, he just hadn't done it. And so once we worked on delegation skills with him and how to delegate effectively, the change there was immediate. It's just really common that, we assume managers are doing things that seem like really obvious to us. And what's more with that situation, once he'd done that, it actually saved him hiring another person because they thought that they were under-resourced in that team. And I have to tell you, I see that all the time too. Teams thinking that they've not got enough people, but so often it just isn't the real issue. It's a leadership skills gap and a lack of taking the right actions. So yes, everybody is really busy and it looks like there's no more capacity, but the thing is they're not being effective, and that's a real issue. So having talked briefly about delegation skills, then gap number 2 is this, addressing performance issues, and that is probably no surprise to you. So often managers avoid addressing issues, whether it's underperformance, whether it's missed deadlines or behaviour that's dragging other people in the team down. Managers just feel uncomfortable dealing with it, or they don't know how to approach it constructively. But, you'll know when we ignore performance issues, they fester, they grow, they lead to more underperformance. The team starts to become a bit more unhappy. Potentially the better performers leave, or they start to take this view of why should I bother if they're going to get away with doing nothing, which then all starts to spiral into a load of moaning and has a negative impact on the team. And we really don't want that. So to lead effectively, your managers need the skills to address these challenges head on in a way that keeps everyone on track. And when these conversations are handled well, they don't just solve immediate problems, they create a culture where everybody knows what's expected of them, where they're accountable, where they feel motivated and they contribute more, and it keeps the team positive and productive. So it actually has a really positive effect rather than the adverse effect that they're imagining. And so then the third point here in terms of missing gap is motivating the team to get the best out of them. Now, we all know that leadership isn't just about getting things done, getting tasks done. It's about creating an environment where people feel motivated, where they feel energized, where they feel willing to go the extra mile. And if you've noticed your teams seem to be just sort of going through the motions a bit more at the moment, or sort of like these whispers of people not being very happy, it's often a reflection of the leadership that they're receiving. Perhaps the manager's being overly critical, perhaps they're coming across as a bit aggressive or abrupt, maybe they're not inspiring their team. People need to feel valued, like they're an important cog in the wheel, not just a number, and really know that their work matters. And many technically strong managers unfortunately lack lack that skill naturally. They just don't have this natural ability or know what to do to inspire and engage a team. And so when that's the case, even the most capable of leaders will only ever reach a fraction of their full potential, and their team won't ever get the results that they could if only they were more motivated. So you might be asking yourself, like, how do you as a CEO or MD develop leadership capability? So to explain that to you, I'm going to just walk you through an example of how one of my clients made the shift and how he built the capability of his finance director so that he was actually managing and leading the team. So my client had an FD who was technically very capable, but he was struggling with the people side of the role. And the MD was constantly pulled back in to sort out problems, issues that really shouldn't have landed back on his plate. Things like complaints that invoices hadn't been paid, reports that people had requested just weren't being done, or they were taking just far too long. Those sorts of little things that just cause these little problems all over the business. And it wasn't that the FD was incapable, it was that he lacked the skills to lead his team to get it done. He'd already done courses on time management and these sort of like generic people type courses, but they're very much theoretical and weren't giving him the practical things that he actually needed to do to be able to do this stuff, to lead his team effectively. So in this case, we use this 16-point framework and we identified the gaps in his leadership capability. And when we got into it, he struggled with the things that I've really already mentioned. So struggled to delegate properly, struggled to address difficult performance problems or underperformance, and he just wasn't motivating the team in a way that was going to get the best from them. So we worked through that with him. We worked through how to delegate in a way that left no ambiguity so that his team knew exactly what was required of them. And we got him confident with having those more difficult conversations, those tough conversations, so that he was tackling underperformance directly and effectively. And we helped him find a way to inspire his team in a way that felt good to him, so that he brought them together, so that his team all felt important in the finance function. And as a result of all of that, over a few weeks, things really started to shift in that team. The FD started taking more ownership, setting clear expectations. He was leading his team confidently. And the MD, who had been on the verge of replacing this chap, found that with the right type of support, he turned into a much stronger leader. And so instead of constantly chasing him up to get things done, the MD could step back, knowing that the finance team was in really good hands. So to pull this together, to rectify these gaps in leadership capability, it's about getting under skin of what the real problem is and solving that. And when that happens, you won't just get a competent technical individual leading a function, you'll get someone who can actually lead the team and get the most out of the people in it. So as we go through, if you're starting to recognise these challenges and you're wondering which of these 16 skills might be causing the issues in your team, then I'm going to be offering some free team audit calls at the end of this session today. On the call, there's going to be the opportunity for us to explore what's holding your managers back and affecting their ability to step up, so that you can address those gaps in a targeted way and stop them relying on you so much all of the time. So there's a QR code here if you think that you'd like one of those that you can either scan or you can type the URL in there. I've helped so many clients and their teams evolve as leaders and get better results from their team. And you'll see loads of testimonials or recommendations for my work. And of course, it can work for you too. So what you'll find is I've got that QR code on the link on some other slides as well as we go forward, in case you don't have enough time and you want to call. But I want us to go on right now. So the second pillar is leadership enablement. So you've built the company this far, you've led your team, I'm sure, through countless challenges, problems, kept everything moving forward, and that's got you to this point of success in your business right now. But as the business continues to grow, what's required from leadership does change. That saying, like, what got you here doesn't get you there, and there's nothing truer in this case. And it's about moving out of all of the details and handling all the issues that come up, and instead taking that role of steering the ship, setting the direction, and ensuring everyone else is dealing with the issues that come up, and shifting your focus really to where it can have the most impact in your business, so that you create an environment where your people can solve problems independently, and that you can let go of some of the operational tasks that have sort of really held you back, and that you've then got the chance to go off and work on the strategy strategy to drive the growth and to be mentoring your team rather than fixing problems for them. And the thing is, and you'll know this, like your time is the most valuable resource in your business. It's a finite resource, but we all know how quickly like that time can get filled up with day-to-day issues. It's natural, isn't it? An urgent problem comes up and suddenly your day is packed with tasks that somebody else maybe should have been dealing with. And the key to leading through this next phase is about deliberately and intentionally getting your managers to manage so that you can do the strategic business growth type work. Now, in my experience and for all the work that I do with CEOs and MDs, one of the hardest shifts to make is getting your managers to manage, and making the move from being in control to managing through managers is quite a different thing. And that's the reason that's so tough is because some of the foundation pieces just often aren't there. And when you combine all the three actions that I'll share with you now today, leadership, capability, enablement, and infrastructure, it's possible to let go and get your managers managing and feel comfortable taking a step back operationally. And it's about stepping into a new kind of leadership at this point, where you move from control to enablement, from firefighting to future building, and you become the leader that your business needs right now. And your team becomes the kind of like cohesive group that drive the company forward with independence and confidence. So I'm going to share with you how to do this by walking through how I've done it with another client. So the client that I'll talk you through today is about a client of an MD of a manufacturing business who got really fantastic results as a result of making a shift in the way that he leads. Now, he is already a great leader in so many ways. His team loved working for him when I met him. He'd created this really supportive, positive environment, but despite all that, he found himself dealing with operational issues for some of his managers that they really should have been handling. Some of his managers weren't following through on tasks that they really needed to do, and they weren't holding their teams accountable enough either, and it was starting to slow down business progress. And like, frankly, and you'll know this, it was costing him lost time and a lot of money in salaries. He'd been avoiding a few tough conversations that he knew needed to happen. And so despite the team like really loving working for him, he also often heard like moaning about other people or problems in the business, and he couldn't understand what all this moaning was about, given it's such a nice place to work. And so by working together with me, he came to understand that he actually needed to shift his approach to leadership enablement. And we took a closer way at the way that he was leading the team, what was working well and what was holding them back. And we focused on identifying what he was doing that was, first of all, a multiplier. So those things that he was doing, the ways that he was behaving that were helping the team get results, and what the diminishers were. So those things that he was doing that unintentionally and unfortunately limited his team's performance. Now, one of the biggest multipliers was his supportive nature. You know, he'd created an environment where people felt comfortable and valued, which is a fantastic foundation. But you know, there were also diminishing habits like avoiding tough conversations or not always setting clear enough expectations. And these behaviours, like, although they were unintentional, they were preventing the team from stepping up and delivering at the level that he needed. So we worked on practical ways to modify his leadership approach to make sure that his supportive style also drove accountability. And one of the key changes there was learning to set expectations in a way that also made the team accountable and got them delivering the right results on time. And the thing is, he actually thought that he was already doing it. It's just that he wasn't being effective in his approach. He said to me, you know, I know what to do and I am doing it. But the problem was he wasn't doing it in a way that was working. And so I helped him just tweak his approach and shift that so that he was setting expectations in a way that people also knew that they were accountable, which meant that they reliably did what they said that they would do. And then another critical area that we worked on was tackling those tough conversations that he'd been avoided. You know, previously he'd sort of skirted around issues because he felt uncomfortable. So I helped him become comfortable and confident with having those conversations. And we broke the conversation down into what needed to be said. And then we practiced framing it so that it felt constructive rather than confrontational. And so once he did that, the feedback started to land well because he was sort of setting out very clearly what needed to be delivered or what needed to change. Get my teeth in. What needed to change, and we got him doing that without undermining the positive environment that he'd built. So we got him saying what needed to be said without undermining that supportive culture that he'd worked so hard on. And the thing is, often CEOs or MDs say to me that they avoid some of these conversations because they might upset things, or because the team is already partly performing, so they don't kind of want to cause another problem, understandably. But it just doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't need to be that way. You can have these conversations and they can be very constructive and well received. It's just about understanding how to have the conversation. And what I see so often is people trying to learn this stuff by reading books or articles that explain processes, steps and theories. And that is a little bit like trying to learn to swim by reading a book. You know, a book doesn't give you the skill to be able to swim. And that's the issue, that they needed to understand their people and their behaviours better so that they could get all of this to land and develop the skill to do it. So going back to my client, after we did this work on his leadership style and making it more enabling, the team started delivering more consistently, thinking about what was coming down the line without him needing to prompt them. They knew what was expected, they felt empowered, and he got them really delivering, all while maintaining that supportive culture that they really valued in that business. This wasn't about a massive overhaul. It wasn't about changing him as a person. It was about making very small but very powerful shifts that transformed the way that he led his team and his managers actually performed. And by modifying his approach and doing all this work, he didn't just drive accountability and ownership in that team of people, he also role modelled effective leadership, which then created a ripple effect because the team started to see how to do it themselves. They started seeing how to step up as leaders, how to lead with clarity, with conviction, and how to tackle challenges head on in a way that really worked and got buy-in from people. And this shift has given him time to work on business growth because he's left so many of those operational problems behind him now. And it's these kind of deliberate changes to your leadership approach that move you from being in the day-to-day operational issues to truly driving your business forward, creating a team that doesn't just depend on you, but actually operates independently and confidently and helps you grow your business. So that's leadership enablement. Covered a lot so far. The third part I want to move into now is leadership infrastructure. So leadership infrastructure, this is about the systems, structures and processes that create the foundation for your team to perform at their best. Now, most CEOs and MDs that I work with believe that they have this in place, but the reality is, very often, nearly always, is that it's only partially built, that there are gaps, or the way that it's being applied isn't effective. And without this full infrastructure, the business will always struggle to grow smoothly because there isn't this solid, robust framework for everybody to operate from. And there's a real a lack of clarity. And this leadership infrastructure isn't about having a business plan or holding team meetings, although those are the starting points. It's about building the underlying systems that allow every part of your organisation to work in sync together. It's the strategic alignment, the communication rhythms, the accountability structures, the business culture that make sure everybody's pulling in the same direction without this need for you to be involved. And that's why, even though many CEOs or MDs think they've set the right infrastructure, they're still finding that their managers are working across purposes, projects are getting stuck, things are getting missed, or teams are clashing about who's responsible. It's because priorities aren't fully aligned. You know, it's easy to assume that people know what's expected of them because it's been discussed with them, but without concrete infrastructure to support it, a way to consistently align, communicate and hold each other accountable, things just get lost and you end up in the weeds just like sorting all of this stuff out. So to share how this works in practice, and let me take a sip of water here. So yes, to share how this works in practice. So there's a client of mine, MD of an engineering company, faced this problem. He was convinced his management team was aligned to the business strategy, but they weren't. And when we dug a little deeper, we found that each manager had a different interpretation of what result he wanted and therefore what they were doing. They were all working hard, without doubt, they were all working hard, but their efforts were scattered because they didn't have this unified clarity about where the business was heading and the top priorities. There was a lot of confusion. You just wouldn't realise until you dug into it, because people don't naturally come and tell you all this stuff. And so the result of that was that there was frustration across the team, there was some misunderstandings, there was a lot of wasted time talking about things that weren't working. And, you know, as an example of the sorts of things that were going on, they had loads of like pressing staff issues, like getting their team delivering on their responsibilities and objectives. But one of the directors was working on a staff engagement app. Now, I love staff engagement, I'm all for it, and I'd normally be totally supportive of that. But the problem was, they just weren't ready to measure staff engagement because they didn't have the foundations in place. There's no point measuring what they already know isn't working. It's a bit like putting a roof on the house before you've built it. You know you already know you don't have the foundations, that you need to get those right first. And people were also missing things because they just didn't know what other people were doing, and people were treading on other people's toes. There was a lot of hidden conflict and friction around the place. And when this is happening, you know that it's happening because there are like little petty squabbles, passive aggressive comments, and those things that you can kind of see simmering a bit under the surface between your teams. So to deal with that, we use my strategic alignment process, which brought everyone together, pulling in the same direction. So we did like many things in this, but just at a high level, we got the strategy and the organisation culture to a point where it was understood and people could see what they needed to do, and more importantly, how they needed to do it too, how they needed to be at work. And then once we had everyone aligned, we then implemented some simple communication flows to ensure that this alignment wasn't just a one-off process that got forgotten. So it included straightforward and quick processes to keep priorities very clear and relevant, so that as things changed, everyone knew what was going on. And if there were setbacks or some adjustments needed, they could actually action them themselves and not need to escalate them to the MD. And most importantly, everyone understood how to behave at work, because so often it's not what we do, but it's like the way that we do it that's causing problems. So they sort of really started to get that. And then finally, we built in accountability mechanisms. So instead of the MD having to check in constantly where people were at and make sure that he was always monitoring things, he could see at a glance where his teams were, and it gave him the confidence to step back and trust his team to deliver. Now, as a result, instead of the MD running around trying to fix things, the teams are working together, there's cohesion, each manager is clear on their role, what's expected, and how their work contributes to the broader goal. Tasks aren't getting missed or duplicated, and everyone has got a sense of ownership. And the MD now has more time, and he says he's got back more than a day a week that he now uses to focus on growth. Now, it wasn't about making a massive change. We infilled existing practices with some simple processes and then completed the infrastructure, which meant everybody was aligned, communication was clear, and accountability was embedded. These small shifts made all the difference. And having done this, the business is growing more smoothly, the team are motivated, and the MD can finally get back to focusing on what matters most, which is actually growing the business and what needs to happen there. And I did this in another business too. And in that business, one of the changes that we made resulted in a 350-hour staff saving. So 2.5 full-timers per month. It was a fairly large SME. From just getting this framework right. And the reason for that was simple. It was because too many people were involved in too many things. And for that business right now, you know, they didn't want to cut those hours out. They actually wanted to invest those hours in worthwhile activity. And they're investing that in growing their business right now. So that's leadership infrastructure. So as we sort of start to draw towards the end of the workshop today, if there's one thing that I would love you to take away, it's that getting your managers to actually manage is about having the right skills, the right environment, and the right infrastructure in place. And it's easy to assume, and people so often do, that some of these gaps will just close themselves with time, or the team will just naturally figure it out. But from what I've seen time and again, is that real lasting change that enables teams to deliver and businesses to grow in a sustainable way requires a deliberate focus and the right kind of support. The truth is, most CEOs and MDs I've worked with, they've done the hard part. They've built a successful business, they've hired the people, and they've already navigated so many challenges. But getting your team to step up and deliver and free you from daily firefighting, it just isn't something that happens without intention. It's about understanding the subtle shifts that need to be made and how to put them into action in a way that works for your business. So some of you will be sat here now and you'll be keen to get this done. So for those of you on the call today who are very keen to get this work done, before I go into a Q&A, I want to introduce you to an opportunity that will help you to implement these changes quickly, effectively and efficiently. And it won't be for everybody here today. It will only be for you, say, if you're sat here thinking that I want to fix these things in my company, I want my team to just be getting the job done so that I can grow my business and not feel hamstringed by all of this stuff. It's for those of you that want to take action. If you don't want to take any action, then it won't be for you. But if you're sat here wondering how we can get this working for you, if you want a team of managers who manage and grow your business, then the opportunity is this. It's my Business Accelerator program. It's a program that will help you develop a high-performing team in your business, a team that's efficient and delivers results. In the Business Accelerator program, we work together across 3 core areas, like those I've just mentioned: infrastructure, enablement, and capability. And at quite a high level, I'll just walk you through what we'll do. First of all, leadership infrastructure area. So in this, we'll implement simple systems that enable high performance and growth. Now, there are 5 core aspects really to this. The first is creating a strategic snapshot. So we get clear, simple goals and priorities that everybody understands and they can act on, so that they know what their targets are and they hit them year after year. The second thing we do is put in place an accountability framework, which turns goals into daily actions so that your team consistently delivers results without constant oversight. The third thing we do is implement a communication rhythm, which keeps everybody aligned and on track and make sure that the team operates smoothly without needing to keep coming back to you for decisions. The fourth is about cultural momentum. So we will build on the culture that you've already created and ensure that it's got the core elements that it needs so that your workplace is a positive, customer-centric, high-performing environment. And then the fifth part of this is about a scalability blueprint. So we put in place simple systems and structures so that as your business grows, you've got everything you need in place to grow it in a sustainable way. So what that means is that you will never need to redo this work. You will always be able to use this process year after year, no matter how big your business grows. It's a lift and drop, so I give you the frameworks. You'll obviously need to tweak them a little bit, and I'd help you to do that to make sure that they fit your business requirements. But the reason it's so effective is because they are simple and they're straightforward, yet at the same time they're very comprehensive, and that's why this works so well. The second area then that we would focus on, because obviously you need more than just the systems piece, is leadership enablement. So this is about empowering your team to deliver and freeing up your time, and there are 3 core parts to this. So the first is leadership skills mastery. So in that part of the program, we'd identify your leadership multipliers and diminishers. So we'd make sure that you're using your strengths wherever you can, and then closing any gaps that you've got in your own leadership skill set so that you lead effectively in any situation. Now, I cover all the people skills that you would need in this part of the program, but we only work on those skills that you need to round off your skill set. So, excuse me, that we make the most of our time together, because it's an accelerator program and we don't want to waste our time on activities or developing skills that you've already got. And I see that in so many other programs as like fillers. I don't do that with you. So we get right to the core of what it is you need to work on, and we'll develop those skills together. Now, the types of issues that I cover vary, obviously, but quite often I'll cover how to have performance conversations with senior managers and directors so that they can deliver results through people. It might be how to deal with managers who can't let go or delegate. It could be those managers who are maybe overwhelmed with work and aren't making the progress that they need to, or how to deal effectively with managers who aren't putting enough focus on people management. Like whatever it is that's getting in the way of you leading your team in the best possible way, we will deal with so that you get the results that you need to through your people. The second part of this is behavioural intelligence. So I'll work with you on understanding human behaviour and emotional responses so that you can manage any situation from anger to tears, and it all happens, doesn't it? So that whatever happens, you lead calmly, you are in control, and you lead in it empathetically, which will mean that you will keep your team focused, you'll keep them productive, and they will get the job done. You know, so often CEOs and MDs will get derailed because they just can't understand why their team say or do certain things. It just seems so, I think someone said to me, weird the other day. It seems so weird. In this part of the programme, I will give you the information that will help you see why people behave like they do, why they say the things that they do, and upskill you in how to manage and handle that in a very straightforward way so that the situation is resolved and it's not derailed by their emotion and allowed to continue. And then the third part is about CEO performance optimization. So here we'll overcome for you any limiting thoughts that you might have, any worries or stresses. For some people in this part of the program, we'll work on like how to feel more comfortable or in control in situations where they feel either underconfident or under pressure, so that you're not derailed by the way that you're feeling in situations, so that you show up like as your best self all of the time. So we really will strengthen your mental resilience so that you don't lose time to distractions like overthinking, playing out conversations in your head, or those things that just zap loads of time. And then the third and final part of the programme is about developing your team so that they deliver consistent results. So the first thing that we do here together is a skills gap diagnosis, and we identify the key skills each leader needs to improve and uncover the root cause of performance issues using a very targeted checklist. It took me years to refine this based on some of like the world's leading leadership organisations, but I've distilled this into some really practical skills that get high performance so that both you and your team can quickly understand what they need to work on, why it is and what to do. And so in terms of the what to do, I'll give you a leadership toolkit. So I give you tailored guidance and tools to quickly address those gaps so that you've got a repeatable process to handle these issues if they come up with future recruits, which means that for you, you won't have to rely on external providers, lengthy leadership programs to fix people problems. Especially since sending people off on management training courses depends on them like fully understanding the content and then actually implementing it. In this program, we will cut straight to the chase. We'll identify the gaps, we'll close them, and you'll get the person performing quickly so that you're not stuck with underperformance dragging out, like wasting time and money. And then the final part of that is about capacity for growth. So here we'll just work out how you attract, retain and develop the right talent with a clear succession plan in place so that your business has got the capacity that it needs to grow, because obviously businesses can only like scale in a sustainable, controlled way to the extent of the people that you actually have. In terms of the program itself, the way that it's delivered is one-to-one. And so that's through these 4 aspects. The first is coaching and mentoring. So there are 2 1.5 hour sessions that we'll have together each month. So that's 3 hours a month that you would need. And I will help you understand the tools, work through the skills that you need, all those things that we've just mentioned, and then offer you tailored to support to make sure that you get that very quickly and can go off and do it and implement it in your business. It's bespoke to you, dependent on where you are in your business right now. So I don't work through that in a very modular way. What we do is work out where the biggest opportunities are for you so that you start to get some really quick wins. And then throughout the 6 months, we'll make sure that we cover everything. And then I provide you with toolkits and frameworks. So I give you all the toolkits, frameworks, processes, checklists, so that you've got a very simple, guaranteed way to implement these things. There's also a WhatsApp channel for ongoing support. So there's a direct line between you and I for quick questions so that we make sure that you progress in a fast way. We don't want time to be wasted between our sessions. If you get stuck on something, you can just ask me and we'll very quickly get that resolved. And then the last part of this is about accountability. So structured accountability to help you to stay on track, to get the changes done and to make the progress you want so that you hit your goals. Now, my programs get great results. You'll see across social media loads of reviews for my work. The Business Accelerator is a 6-month program. You will need 3 hours a month for it, and anything outside of that will be doing the activities that you really would need to be doing anyway as a CEO or MD of the business. So there's not loads of studying that goes on top of this. It's practical, it's well paced, it's actionable. You know, we probably could do it in less time. We could probably do it in 3 months, but you're busy people. So we spread this across 6 months to make it doable for you, because I know that you're busy. And I will support you over those months to make the shifts you need to get your managers actually managing like in a very manageable way. And as I said, we work on highest priorities, quick wins, so that you start to get results after a couple of weeks. So if you'd like to speak to me about that today or across the next week, then I'm offering a limited number of free team audit calls. On the call, we will discuss how you can get the results that you want from your team. We can go through where you are now, where you want to be, and map out a plan to get there. And then you can ask me any questions that you would like to about the program itself. Now, I've only got a limited number of calls available because I've only got a limited amount of time across the next week. But if you go to the QR code and look for an appointment and can't find one that suits, then just DM me on LinkedIn or email me, and we'll see if we can find a time that suits. In terms of the program itself, I only take a very limited number of people in to this program because it's such a personalised program. It's such a high level of support in it. It's the highest level support program I offer. So if you know that you want a place in January intake, then if you could get your call in sooner rather than later, that would be fabulous. So as I say, there's a QR code there. Scan that, grab a slot, and I will look forward to seeing you and helping you on one of those team audit calls. So having said all of that, I hope that was useful for you today. What I want to do now is just open up for any questions that you might have, and that can be about the programme or it can be about something that I said today. I'd be very happy to answer any question that you've got on your mind right now. So let me go across and see what's going on in the chat. Okay, so, right, what's going on here? Right, so who would like to ask any questions at this point? If you just type any questions you've got into either the chat or the Q&A, that would be great. We'll just leave a little bit of time to see if anybody wants to ask any questions. If, of course, you don't have time now to ask questions, or you maybe sat wanting to ask a question but haven't, then, as I say, you can always DM me or email me. I'd be really happy to answer any questions that you have about the programme or actually about the content that I've shared with you today as we move forward. So it doesn't look like there are any questions. So, oh, actually, okay, great session. You've got one thought about initial recruitment, i.e. recruiting the right people and getting it right from the start. Yeah, absolutely. That's something that needs to happen. And in terms of, I agree with you, that needs to happen. In terms of like how I help with that support, is that I'll help you understand what needs to happen in the recruitment process in order to do that. So in terms of the final part of the final module, which is about attracting talent, there's a piece there about how do you position your business so that it's an attractive place for people to actually want to come and work for the start, and then actually how do you assess that they're the right person for your team. And I find those are probably the two biggest areas that I cover in the attraction piece, because what I find is many people leave it to recruiters, which is fine, or put a job on Indeed or LinkedIn or somewhere else. But there's just a small piece missing around how they're positioning their organisation. So whichever mechanism they're using, they just need to be looking at how to position the business so that it's attractive. And then also, like, how do you assess? Because I find some really mixed ways of assessing people aren't very comprehensive. And so what that's leading to is a lot of churn in people. So it's a good point that you make there. I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know if there was a question you had a thought. yeah, if there was a question around that and I've not answered it, just let me know. Oh, inheriting a team and investing. Yeah, inheriting a team obviously can happen. And that's about really the process in there of assessing their capability. So if I take you back to the section where I was talking about assessing capability, there's a piece there to be done, and then making sure that you're supporting them in the right way, whether you're setting expectations in the right way, and then going about making sure that you're holding them accountable for change, so that you're not tolerating performance from people you've inherited for too long. And what I find actually is often the way that you lead those people moving forward can have a massive difference. So, and you might find this yourself, that you can actually come in and find people that are underperforming, and if you lead them in a different way, you'll get a different result from them. Very often it's just about the leadership approach that's happened. Not always, but 90% of the time, I would say. Okay. Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, so absolutely, you get the right people from the beginning. Thanks, One. I like that. It's still a leadership accountability, make your team attractive. It is. I think that we underestimate, when someone's out looking for a job, they're not looking for the next boring place to work, are they? Or the next unexciting proposition. They're looking for somewhere that fits with those things that they aspire for or to, and it's about identifying what those are. And your business won't be suitable for everyone, but what you want to do is call out the things that make it suitable for the right people who are going to fit in with your team and what you want from them, and that's the linchpin there. So, any other questions from anyone? Thank you for asking that. It's always nice to have something a bit different I've not been asked that one for a while, so it's always nice to have something a bit different to be asked. Any other questions from anyone, or any other comments or thoughts? I'm really happy to answer or share some insights. See where we are. I've still got people on the call. So, are there people here that are wanting to ask questions that haven't? If you've got a question, feel free to ask. I'd be really very happy to help. Sometimes they take a minute to come through, so I'll just give it a minute, and then if I don't get any more, then I will close the call down for today. Okay, I don't think any more are coming through, so I'm going to close the call down there. If you'd like to grab a time to chat with me, then I would love to speak to you. If you've got questions, DM me or email me, happy to answer for you. But thank you for today. Thank you for coming along and paying attention, and I'll speak soon. Take care.